Hello. Hi. Good morning. How are you? Uko salama? Karibuni sana. It's great to see you all. I'm excited. I hope you are. Are you? I don't see it. Where are the smiles? Oh, they're behind the mask. Great to see you. You're welcome to this press club. Karibuni sana. Those of you joining us virtually, karibuni sana, sana, sana. First off, let me request all of you to stand for the national anthem, for our national prayer. Amen to that. Please, Martin, lead us in a word of prayer before we start.
Let's pray. Lord, we come before you this afternoon to seek your blessings as we commence our event today. We pray that you guide us, that you uphold journalists of this country as they do their work, so that they do it for the benefit of the nation and the world at large. I pray, trusting in the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen. Thank you, Martin. Thank you very much to all of you for making time to be here. Karibuni sana, please take your seats. It's great to have you here. It's great to see you all looking great. Karibuni sana, those of you joining us virtually. Please, during this meeting, some housekeeping rules. Please keep your gadgets muted at all times unless you've been given a chance to speak. But on the chat section, you can post your questions, you can post your remarks, your opinion, anything you want to share with us, you can post it on the chat section. In our midst today, we have a delegation from the UK High Commission led by Madame Jane. Great to see you all. Thank you so much for being here. We also have our council members led by our President Churchill. I don't see you. Where is the president? Has anybody seen him? Oh, I think I should give a minute to each one of you to introduce yourselves to the team, right? The council members, please. There's a microphone here. Start with Bonnie, please.
Okay, I think I'm loud enough.
You are?
Good afternoon, everybody. Joseph Bonio, council member for TV. So I'm a business editor at Citizen TV. Thank you.
I am Martin Maasai. I'm a trustee of the guild, and I also serve as editorial director of a radio station called Untitled. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is George Nyabuga. I'm an executive council member representing the academia. My day job is an associate professor at the University of Nairobi, teaching journalism and media. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Linda Batch, council member, print, and I work at the Standard Group as the revise editor. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Arthur Kwemba, trustee Kenyan Editors Guild, but I work also as the executive director of African Women and Child Future Service. Thank you.
Good morning. Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Rukwaro. I work at the Raw Media Services as a managing editor in Noro TV. And from today, I'm told I've joined the programs
Committee.
programs committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Daniel, do you want to introduce us to your team?
Sure.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Daniel Johnson. I'm the head of communications at the British High Commission. Nikolai.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Nikolai Hutchinson. I'm a governance advisor at the High Commission in charge of our governance programs. Thanks.
Who else hasn't introduced themselves? Annie?
Good morning, all. Oh, it's good afternoon. How are you all? My name is Annie White, Kenya Editors Guild, as the administrator and project assistant.
Anybody else?
Good afternoon. My name is Raylene Kamboa. I am an intern at the Kenya Editors Guild.
We are set. And my name is Zubeda Kananu Kome. I'm the vice president at the Kenya Editors Guild. I'm also a news anchor at KTN News and an editor, programs editor at KTN News. It's great to have you here. I'm humbled. I'm honored to be here in your presence today and to moderate this session. I believe we are meeting in a very difficult time, a very difficult moment. Media has been greatly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And I believe by the end of this session, we'll have a thing or two to learn from each one of us on how we'll be able to maneuver, on how we'll be able to conquer and overcome this pandemic, because yeah, it's been a tough time for all of us. So we look forward to hearing from each one of you and learning from each one of you on how we'll be able to cushion journalists moving forward whenever such a time comes. Or we don't pray for it to come, but we pray that we'll be able to overcome it, right? So to give the opening remarks, please allow me to welcome my boss, our president, Churchill Otieno. Karibu sana, my boss. Presda.
Your Excellency Jane Marriott, High Commissioner, the UK to Nairobi, and your team, council members of the Guild, distinguished editors, members of the Guild joining us physically, and many more joining virtually. Good afternoon. Mine today is very, very simple. The first is to welcome all of you and to thank you indeed for making the time to allow us to then engage and have this very, very important conversation that we must have today. This is the 15th press club that the Kenya Editors Guild is holding. And the press club really is a platform that allows editors to interact and to engage with newsmakers and policymakers on topical issues. Many times editors don't ordinarily go out to interact with newsmakers. A lot of time they get reports from colleagues in the newsroom, but also a second role, a second objective of the Press Club is to bring out media issues onto the national stage. Because media is not for journalists. Media is for the people. And it's important that the people also get to follow what issues we are dealing with. So I think it's very opportune that just a week after the world marked the World Press Freedom Day, we get a chance to host the High Commissioner on a theme that is very close to our heart, a theme on media freedom. I'm sure that we should have a fairly engaging and robust discussions, because the rules of the Press Club is that we must elevate freedom of expression. Therefore, we should speak frankly, speak truthfully, and illuminate all the issues so that all stakeholders can then see how to engage. So mine is to give license to anybody with the issues in their hearts to contribute to this discussion. Please speak to us in the media directly and frankly. And those of us in the media should also speak to you directly and frankly, because it's only when there's robust engagement that then we can improve our circumstances. I welcome you and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As I started by saying, it's been a tough time. As colleagues, we've lost members of CARE, we've lost our colleagues through this pandemic. We have many colleagues who've been infected during this pandemic. And I would like to urge each one of us to observe a minute of silence in respect to our colleagues who died during this pandemic, including our senior Philip Ocheng, who also died, although it's not related to COVID, but we lost him during this time. So let's all observe a minute of silence for the departed colleagues. Amen. May their souls rest in peace. Thank you very much once again for making time to be here today. Those of us joining virtually, we welcome you. As I said earlier, please keep your gadgets muted so that you are able to communicate. If you have a question that you want to share with us, please post it on the comment section or chat section. And then later during this meeting, during the plenary session, we'll be able to go through your questions. Karibuni sana. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your opening remarks. Right now, let me invite the chairperson of Ethics and Media Freedom Committee, Martin Maasai, to give his remarks. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Our guest of honor, who is also the keynote speaker, Your Excellency Jane Marriott and your delegation, colleagues gathered here this day, I'd want to engage all of us in a conversation on the theme of enabling press freedom in Kenya. Conversations about press freedom are old, quite old. And I guess we will engage and leave the conversations to be taken up by other people who come after us. But since we are the ones on it, we must also play our part. Let me say that freedom of the media is a principle that communication and expression should be considered a right to be exercised freely via spaces in print and electronic media. And so here in Kenya, our media freedom is founded firmly on the Constitution of Kenya, Article 34, Section 5. And it's also supported in national legislations, quite a set of them. And as we will see in this conversation, we will need to find out whether these legislations that come after the article in the Constitution, Article 34, whether those legislations are supportive or they are a clawback to media freedom. Let me also say that media freedom is also grounded on international instruments such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which grants every person freedom of opinion and expression, freedom to receive and impart information as you will. And also in the international regional instruments such as the International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, and in the African Charter on Human Rights. And these legislations, they recognize, they empower the people of this country to be as expressive as possible. Within the Kenyan context, I want to identify those as key legal enablers of freedom of expression. But to take this conversation forward, we also have in Kenya as a great enabler, a great audience framework that demands to get to know, that encourages us, the practitioners, to seek and get and relay it back to them so that citizens know. As the president has indicated, really this freedom is for the benefit of citizens. And I think it's necessary to identify our great audiences in print, radio, television, and the social media as enablers of this freedom. We also have in this country a robust stakeholder framework. People, their organizations, media related. As I speak now, I think organizations that are media based, they're getting to about 16. You have AMWIC, for instance. You have Crime Reporters Association. You have Article 19. It also sticks out its neck for purposes of media freedom. In a way, we can speak about the Media Council of Kenya because it's a co-regulated entity, Media Council, and many other such robust stakeholders. Let me also not forget the Media Sector Working Group, which sits to give impetus to some of these legislations and speak to government over some of the concerns that exist as we try to exercise freedom of media. I also want to identify media plurality as an enabler. Gone are the days when we used to speak in this country of a few newspapers, the national broadcaster, and the national radio. The FM stations that I come from are so many, and as I stand here, they are speaking to citizens of this country. These are not the days when you'd have to wait until morning to see what happened yesterday. The plurality of media players has enabled participation, contribution in media freedom, real time. Things have changed thanks to media plurality in the enjoyment or exercise of freedom, media freedom. I also want to identify the technological advancement that we are enjoying in this country and the world over as a key player in enabling media freedom. Every citizen with a gadget like this is a reporter, is an editor, is a publisher. Although there are underlying things about that situation. But the reality is that freedom of expression has gone to a new level. I want to say that these freedoms, as we enjoy them, they also come with responsibilities. In fact, the essence of that freedom, that public good for the people of Kenya, has to be underlined by responsibility. And I wish that these players that I've mentioned up here, they could also subscribe to this particular value so that you communicate with responsibility, so that you are accurate, you are ethical, that you are fair, you are objective, that you are professional, that there is a code of conduct to follow. We in the formal media do it, but the rest, the clan, the emerging clan in the social media, these are alien values. And I think much as we want this freedom enhanced, responsibility must be on top all the time. I will not be fair in this conversation if I just speak about the enablers without identifying the pushback effect that has also come out of these enabling efforts. The media sector legislation leaves a lot to be desired. We still have the Official Secrets Act intact, irrespective of what the Constitution says. We have Access to Information Act, which is being implemented so ineffectively as to render useless the growth of freedom of expression in this country. Government functionaries also kick in these conversations. Let me also highlight this other law, the Cyber Crimes Act. It's creeping to claw back freedom of expression. We have seen what has happened to people who express themselves on social media. Books and Newspapers Act is still intact. If you want to publish you have to execute a bond of 1 million shillings, and so on and so forth. Let me also indicate within the Media Act and the KECA Act, they have overlapping roles. Government agencies that seem to have competing responsibilities. And this doesn't augur well. In fact, what happens is they tend to want to shut down media houses. And I would want to say without any iota of doubt that some of these laws are a violation of Article 34 of the Constitution. Having said this, I want to mention that a conversation is kicking in about media viability. Media viability needs to be looked at in a way that a viable media may have the guts to stand up to the state and do things within the framework provided for in enjoying the freedoms of expression that are provided for in Article 34. And the more we empower our media houses to be viable, the better the conversation in my thinking. But I want to share with you here that as I was thinking about this conversation of today, something that I discovered, which is done by Germans, I hope I'm not offending our guest speaker by citing this, about media viability. I'm saying here that financially stable media houses have greater chances of enjoying greater media freedom than those that are struggling. They do not have time to speak to the government advertising agency to look for advertising, because government is the biggest advertiser. It has a big, big cake. And there's carrot stick business, that if you want to get this cake, you must stop saying these things, which undermines freedom of expression. So Germany's DW Academy has identified 24 media viability indicators, 24, but I'll just touch on 4 in our case here. One of them is rule of law. It visualizes laws that guarantee right to citizens' participation in governance and a judiciary that applies laws and judgments impartially to businesses and individuals. And as I say this, you need to interrogate what our judiciary does when a person walks before the judges with a plea on libel and slander. They deal with media in such a way as to encroach on media freedoms. So this model from DW Academia is looking at that rule of law component. It is looking at the freedom expression, saying that the country has a strong legal framework supporting freedom of expression. Look at our case where the Constitution says this, but the attendant laws close back. Criminal and civil statutes and actions are not used to silence and intimidate journalists. We can reflect on here, what happens here, that the opposite happens. those statues are used to, I hope I'm not, I'm just concluding. So the law of libel and slander, within that freedom of expression, from that those indicators of media viability, libel and slander laws are limited as much as possible to provide protection to journalists and citizens who have spoken truthfully. Here, that consideration is not there. Judiciary people want to score with higher fines for media houses so that you shut them down and end the story. There is also the question of access to information. It visualizes where citizens and journalists can access public information freely, where government officials are available to provide information to news and media organizations on a fair and equitable basis, where government meetings and hearings are held openly. So, I don't know, we know what happens here, that these things don't exist here. So our viability, media viability concept is put into question, and we probably are living on borrowed time. The last is media within society. The last key indicator among the four that I said I wanted to share. Relations between government and the media are mutually respectful and professional. That's the dream, that the government and agencies respect the societal role of media organizations. Their relations are professional, even during high tension between media and the state, that there is respect among the institutions. Do you remember the conversation about newspapers are for wrapping meat? Statements coming from the top level of government that bring ridicule to media people in society. It doesn't bring honor to our practice. So having said that, let me just wrap up and say that it is so clear that those set up against media freedom are teaming up, are teaming. They're growing by the day, they're growing by the hour. Even as I speak to you, there is most likely a conspiracy taking place to make sure that lead stories that have been investigated in our dailies and television stations will not see light of day. There are bands of people in the hands of politicians and government functionaries whose assignment is this clawback. So I need to urge you, colleagues, this day, that this war, much as we have Article 34, may look like it's done from far. But in reality, it is far from being done. And the struggle is there, and it will take you, as media people, it will take us, because you're on the front line, to raise this campaign to a new level, even as we rely on our collaborators, on Article 19s, on organizations the world over who support freedom of expression. We, as journalists of Kenya, are at the front line. We must be ready to take the bullets in the struggle for greater freedom of expression space. I am not calling on you to become suicide bombers, not at all. Just want us to be calculated, to be resilient, to be truthful to the job that we do, to remain accurate, to remain responsible, because at the end of the day, we have a country that we have a responsibility to. Let us not make it look to politicians and whoever else who has political power that we don't care about our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my senior, Bwana Maasai. You've raised very critical issues today. You know, even though Article 34 and 35 of the Constitution guarantees us freedom, it was noted during the Press Freedom Day that we have about 20 laws that need either to be amended or repealed because they are oppressing us as media. So it's something that we need to keep pushing for, because we can't walk out along the streets saying that the Constitution is protecting us, whereas there are hidden laws in other laws that are oppressing us as media. So it's something that we need to keep championing for. We need these laws amended for us to enjoy a free media in Kenya. You've also raised the issue of sustainability. How can we be sustainable as media, especially in times like now? I'm sure we'll be able to learn from the UK Commissioner on how or what they are doing to cushion media houses and journalists from threats that we keep facing in today's world. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce the next guest. She is the British High Commissioner to Kenya since September 2019. Prior to taking her current position, she was the director of UK's Joint International Counterterrorism Unit. She joined UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office in 2001. She is, and I repeat, she is on the front line in action against gender-based violence, female genital mutilation, and sexual harassment. Jane Marriott, everybody.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you so much for that lovely warm welcome. And thank you for inviting me here today. I'm honoured and delighted to have this opportunity to be here with you, both online, virtually, and here in this room today. And congratulations, Churchill, on your re-election as the president of the Kenya Editors Guild, which, as we all know, because we're sat here today, is a vital institution, not just for media freedom in Kenya, but for accountability, governance and democracy in this country that I've been lucky enough to call home for nearly 2 years now. I'd also like to thank the Guild for hosting my minister, the UK Minister James Duddridge, as the keynote speaker at your regional event to mark World Press Freedom Day last week. He spoke at a similar event here in Kenya when he was in Nairobi last December to mark Human Rights Day. So it was excellent to have him involved and a clear indication of how seriously the UK takes all of these issues. After these thank yous, a short apology. I know sometimes when many of you in the media see speech from the High Commissioner in your programme, there's a glint in your eyes, a hope that I'm going to say something really controversial that will make for great headlines and probably ruin my relationship with the government of Kenya. So I'm sorry to disappoint, but I'm not going to be doing that today. I did, before I took up the post here, meet with all of my predecessors who are still alive and discussed some of those conversations with them. And I'd say that they were glad that they did what they did, and there's a right place and a right time for all statements. So I will be keeping it a bit cleaner today, but I hope the subject matter that we're here to discuss will more than make up for it. Because the subject is media freedom, and that essentially means we're talking about you. All of you online, all of you here in this room. This is an opportunity to mark and celebrate you and celebrate media freedom, the beating heart of a functioning democracy. We celebrate you and everything that you do in your positions to hold power and authority to account. And that includes holding me and the UK to account as well. even if it's uncomfortable sometimes. And frankly, good journalism does lead to uncomfortable moments, and that is as it should do, because it's our duty as foreign missions to subject ourselves to scrutiny. So I don't know if he's online today, but I'd like to mention Wahiga Mawara of Citizen TV, one of those who won an award on World Press Freedom Day, for which many congratulations. Because you'll recall the fire in March that started in Laldea Conservancy. It was not the UK's best moment. And we invited Wahiga to my house, and he put me through the paces and asked some very difficult questions. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't fun. I really didn't want to be doing it. But it was really important that he asked those questions, and it was really important, we thought, that I was there to answer those and to explain what was happening. And to my mind, this is the pact between the media and those that you are holding to account. You have to ask us difficult questions, and it's incumbent on us to answer them, because that is how democracy works. I completely defend, therefore, Wahiga's right, your collective right, to ask those difficult questions and to hold us all to account. It's what you're here to do, it's your job, and we're all better as a society when you do that job. And just for the record, because this is my speech, the Kenya Wildlife Service has confirmed that no elephants died in that fire. The wildlife is fine. So I'm here to celebrate Wahiga and celebrate all of you. But before going any further, I'd like to take this opportunity to celebrate and pay tribute to all of the journalists that we've lost in the last year over COVID, but also particularly to one, as you mentioned, Vice President, who didn't die of COVID, but we did lose last month. Paula Chiang, your veteran editor and columnist, who I know inspired many of you. May he rest in peace and serve as a shining example to this region and of what great journalism can do. As I hope you can tell, my love of journalism runs deep. Before I joined the UK government and the world of foreign affairs, I had wanted to be a journalist. And at university, I edited the student paper, Palatinate, and worked during my summer holidays at two of the UK's great newspapers, The Times and The Observer. And I had dreams of following in the footsteps of my hero, Kate Adie. And for those who don't know, Kate was the chief news correspondent for the BBC between 1989 and 2003. And in June 89, Kate Adie was in Tiananmen Square as 2,000 demonstrators were shot by Chinese government troops. I was too young enough to understand the politics behind all of this, but what I did do as I saw Kate Adie on the screen is, first of all, I went, oh my God, women can do jobs like that? I had no idea, because I'd never seen women doing jobs like being a chief news correspondent in a conflict zone, being shot at. And secondly, it's like, my God, these jobs are so important. Is that how I can help? Is that how I can contribute? Is that how I can make a difference? And Kate Adie, at huge personal risk, made sure she did what the protesters asked of her. Tell the world what is happening to us. So even though I've since ended up in a different profession, I've been full of admiration for journalists, and I've never doubted the centrality of good journalism to a free, open, and democratic society. Or even just a free and open society, frankly. Democratic is good, but you need good journalism in all countries of all political natures. And I've keenly felt the importance of using positions like the one I am in today as High Commissioner of the UK to Kenya, or as Ambassador in Yemen or in Iran, to stand up for media freedom and to stand with the people who make my life difficult by necessity, because that is your job. So in Kenya, we are fortunate enough to have a vibrant, diverse media with well-trained journalists determined to get to the truth. And despite the challenges that COVID has presented, we've seen plenty of that in some of the exposés which have come to light during the COVID-19 pandemic. And you face a huge assignment in the next 18 months as we approach a referendum and an election where citizens need to be informed on the issues as well as the soap opera politics. We know there are serious challenges. I know Churchill and many of you, and as we've just been hearing, are operating in a space which has been and is being squeezed. You're short of defenders, sometimes including in Kenya's parliament. And this is a concern to us, and we're working to support media freedom, including with some new programming, which I will come to in a moment. But first, I want to set out the principles that the UK wholeheartedly supports. As I said earlier, media freedom is the beating heart of a functioning democracy. We need an independent and sustainable media with laws, policies, and professionals to serve society. We need investigative journalists who spend days, weeks, even months getting to the real heart of stories that other people don't want to be told. We need a media that holds power in all of its forms to account. And by power, I don't just mean the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, although they are at the central heart of this. I also mean business, civil society, individuals, perhaps even your own bosses in media houses. And we need journalists to be safe in their endeavours, working without fear of interference or attack. A free press forms a foundation for economic prosperity, for social development, for more open and inclusive societies. The exchange of information allows economies to flourish. So this is actually about all of Kenya and all of us across the world, because there is a link between press freedom and a higher GDP. Where press freedom thrives, so does social equality at home, at school, and in the workplace. When we support a free media, we support women, we support minority groups, and we support the most vulnerable in our society. And yes, there are challenges in this modern world about misinformation and disinformation, about the use of social media platforms. And that is why actually traditional media have an even more important role to play than ever as the truth seekers and the truth tellers in society across the globe. The UK will defend and promote a free and fair global media for all of our sakes. 2.5 years ago, with our Canadian friends, the UK launched the Media Freedom Campaign. And since then, we've brought together 47 countries through the Media Freedom Coalition to advocate for greater freedoms and call out and sanction those who abuse journalists. Despite considerable challenges in the last year, we've been working through the coalition and through our partners, which includes UNESCO, to improve the safety of journalists and to fight against impunity for the crimes committed against them. The Global Media Defence Fund has supported over 40 projects so far, mainly on this continent. And the projects include things like supporting legal clinics, lawyer networks, and pro bono mechanisms, and that are moving against laws that would harm or limit media freedom. The UK is also supporting media freedom through our official development assistance, our ODA money to the media sector in a wide range of developing countries. The UK is consistently in the top 5 aid donors to the media sector globally, and we provided 17.2 billion shillings in official development assistance on the media and free flow of information in 2019. We are also championing, as I hope you saw, media freedom through our G7 presidency this year to encourage the international community to focus on this vital cause. And here in Kenya, we've been building a support network of female journalists. Our election programs has a component on media monitoring, on elections reporting, on monitoring hate speech, and supporting the Elections Commission in their media outreach for civic education. And today I'm delighted, this is breaking news, to announce a new program of support to media freedom and the media environment in Kenya. Our Protect program, as it's named, will support and work with the sector in Nairobi, Kisumu, and Mombasa. Over the coming years, we hope that this Protect program will make an important contribution to media freedom in Kenya. It has got 4 local partners, some of which we've heard from today. So Article 19, HIVOS, the International Centre for Non-Profit Law, and Internews. It will provide grants to other organisations, including the Maslenga Trust, which monitors Parliament, the Civil Society Reference Group, and will give grants directly to journalists in Mombasa and Kisumu to support the production of data journalism stories. So it's a holistic program. So it's not just about training or mentoring individual journalists. It's actually got 5 main strands. The first is to improve the use of data to hold government to account on service delivery. Contributing to an improved policy and legal environment is the second. Supporting female journalists in particular to have a safe and secure operating environment. Fourthly, to support media houses on future business models, which we've heard a lot about today, are under pressure, and the business models are crucial for media resilience, of course. And finally, promoting civic education on the crucial issue of the role of the media. And it's early days, But since this Prevent programme began operating in January, we've already chalked up a small number of successes with programme launches in Mombasa and Kisumu last month in April. We've published, Protect has published a monitoring report on the violations and attacks against media practitioners on World Press Freedom Day. It's run data journalism training for journalists in Mombasa. It's set up a mentorship programme for journalists on how to use data in stories. It's provided training for journalists, female journalists, on safety and protection in their work, both physical and digital safety. And I have to say, I was with a group of female journalists a few weeks ago, and comparing the horror stories that each and every one had faced, from those 2 a.m. phone calls from a senior politician telling them what they should or shouldn't be reporting, through to the violence, the intimidation and threats online, and even people driving past them and signalling an execution shot with a finger revolver to intimidate these journalists who are doing nothing more or less than their jobs. And this is not acceptable. And finally, our programme has begun online training on the role of non-profit organisations in the Financial Action Task Force risk assessment process. We've begun discussing this programme with the Guild, and it is very early stages, so your input and support and partnership is extremely welcome, and I hope to be able to come back in the future, if you will have me, and tell you more about what it has achieved. This type of support is not unique to Kenya. Although I speak to you today as the British High Commissioner to Kenya, I know the Guild is taking on a leadership role in an extremely challenging region for journalists. And I hope that the UK can help support that too. Our Minister for Africa's speech last week is just one example. In Uganda, we've held conferences, excuse me, not COVID, the water went down the wrong way. In Uganda, we've held conferences for journalists on the challenges facing the media, on media ethics, on fact-checking and on fake news. In Sudan, the UK is supporting the media sector as that country moves through transition. And we've been running a project which empowers media to interrogate the economic transition and communicate what it means to Sudan's people. Somalia, possibly one of the most challenging places for journalists in the world, we've supported the training of journalists through UNESCO and are working with 6 radio stations to improve the quality of their programmes. We've also helped the media school at Hargeisa University to improve its curriculum. There are many more programmes I could mention, that's just a fraction, both in the region and here in Kenya too, not just on media freedom explicitly, but also on our wider governance work. But often the most powerful thing we can do, as you show every day with your pens, with your voices on radio in front of the camera, is to use our voices. And that's why I'm here today, to use my voice and the position that my voice gives me to support all of you. Sometimes I will use this voice in public, like some of my predecessors have done. Sometimes it will be in private, because that can be more effective to getting the change that we need. But our voice is here to support your endeavours and the principle of media freedom in Kenya. So thank you again for the opportunity to come and speak to you today and to celebrate the important work that each and every one of you do. So to all of you out there, to all of you in this room who are defending media freedoms and who are making our world a better, more accountable place, I say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
That was such great news, right? Right? You're not excited about the new program? I am personally excited. Thank you very much, ma'am, and the entire team. Asante sana. You've raised these issues at a point where, as media, we are still facing lots and lots and lots of threats, right? We know journalists still face threats from government by being gagged and threatened for publishing and broadcasting information that demands for accountability from government and state offices, right? It's still a challenge. It's still a challenge that we need to say no to. Government institutions' failure to provide information required by law, especially for investigative stories. We need to demand and fight for opposition as media in this country. We can't say no, we can't keep quiet when each and every day our journalists are threatened out there. Journalists being penalized without fair hearing and threats to take away broadcast licenses through government regulatory authority instead of tackling complaints about media practitioners and media houses through Media Council. Why should we continue to allow this to happen in our society? Yeah, these are some of the things that we need to say no to. And that's why I open the floor for the plenary session. Please, if you have questions or if you have an issue that you want to raise, the floor is now open. For those of us joining online, virtually, please post your questions on the chat section. You can also raise your hand if you have a question. The floor is also open to you here. If you have any question that you want to ask, feel free. Where do we start, or who do we start with? Yeah, JB?
Yes, I think I've been tasked by reading some of the questions that are on chat.
Yes.
So I hope my eyes will not fail me. We have a question from one of the attendees online. Says, with exit of the Kanu regime in 2002, the new government made several abortive attempts to locate the grave of Mau Mau Freedom War hero Dedan Kimathi, who was sentenced to death by colonial authorities and I think hanged at Kamiti prison in February 1957. The Kimathi family, human rights groups, and others also made attempts to locate the burial place. Kamiti in vain. British authorities kept meticulous records, some of which were removed from Kenya as independence approached. This would include documents pointing to the exact burial site of Kimathi and other freedom fighters executed in colonial jails. Has the Kenyan government made any formal request to the British government for help locating the graves of Kimathi? I think the long shot of this is raising, if at all the Guild and other groups asked this, would the UK government cooperate in trying to locate this? I don't know who asked the question. You can get the name of
we don't know.
Must be, is it Macharia Gaido? It's Macharia Gaido. Yes, it's from Macharia Gaido. So he says if the Guild and other groups made the attempts to ask the UK government to help in locating this grave, would this be something that you would work with us on? Any other question online? Okay, so far that is the only question online. So I think probably we can go to the floor and see. Okay, Professor Nyabuga.
Oh. She can respond to that first, or? We take several? Okay.
Thanks a lot to, yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot for the conversation today. I just want to respond to raise one thing to what Martin Maasai had said, and also pose a question to the British High Commissioner, Jen. First is, media freedom is very critical for a just, accountable, inclusive, and democratic society. And for those attributes to be achieved, voices of women and men have to be heard and given a chance in the media. The challenge we have now in that particular dimension, when it comes to media, women voices are not captured in the media. Recent studies shows that, for instance, in Kenya, less than 24% of those who have heard, listened, or seen in media are women. So from where I see it is, media freedom can only be complete if both genders have access and their views can be heard in the media to lead to that just society. It's a conversation we can have. We don't have time now, but it's a conversation we can have. How do we do that? And I like the program, Protecting, that the High Commissioner has just announced today. I hope there are measures within that program to ensure that the three organizations, whenever they fund particular organization, one of the key requirements is voices of both genders have to be heard. Yes, so that for that to be a success. Now, to my question, recently we have read the British government reducing funding, development assistance to both UN and other organizations. I'm just hoping it will not impact on your funding on media freedom programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Prof?
Yes.
High Commissioner respond, then we take the other rounds of questions.
Thank you very much, Madam High Commissioner. I think it's always interesting and, of course, informative to listen to such people when they speak. And we're delighted, of course, as the Kenya Editors Guild, with the support that you're offering, especially not only journalists in Kenya, the media organizations, but also to the region. I mean, we know the challenges that exist in places like Somalia, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Eritrea. And of course, a very close home, Uganda and Tanzania, and maybe to some extent, Kenya. Of course, it's important to improve press freedom. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask, and especially with regard to the Protect program, why Kisumu, Nairobi, and Mombasa, given the challenges that exist, especially at the counties and the grassroots? And the fact that we want to ensure that journalists in places like northeastern parts of the country, with terrorism, for example, and other challenges that exist in those places, I think it would be important to include them to ensure that, because we work in an ecosystem, and for a long time we've been accused of marginalizing journalists that work in peri-urban and rural places. So I think it's important to have them in that program, because I think the Protect program is important in improving press freedom and the quality of journalism in this country. The other maybe question is, of course, the support that we need to give our public broadcaster. I think KBC for a long time has been, a major player in this sector. And we've been working very hard to try and improve the quality of our public broadcaster. And any support, of course, that is offered to that organization will be critical. And thirdly, and lastly, is we know that the future of journalism lies in, for example, with the academia. And maybe I'm interested in this. And we trying as a Kenya Editors Guild to have a mentorship program with the support of various organizations. And then perhaps the British government, your High Commission would like to also try to support that kind of program so that we develop the next group of journalists. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Professor Nyabuga. I think we can have the High Commissioner respond to this.
Should she respond from there or here?
Yes, there are some that respond from the podium.
Very much. Great sets of questions, and I'd obviously expect no less from the assembled masses. So to take those in turn, on the Kamathi family issues, I mean, first of all, the UK and Kenya have got a really complicated history together. It's a long history, and a lot of that is not good history from the UK. But we are now in 2021 and working through that history together, and having a forward-looking partnership has very much been the basis of how we've worked together for many years now, including the launch of this strategic partnership between His Excellency President Kenyatta and Prime Minister Boris Johnson in January 2020, that long-distance day pre-COVID, when all we knew was that it was a problem in another corner of the globe. But as part of that history does come, and part of that relationship does come to addressing some of the historical issues. So, there has been, within the past decade, legal cases around that that have come to arrangements. And, I'm very happy to look at, I haven't received any direct requests from the Kenyan government, but, very happy to look at requests as we work together. I know that our questioner mentioned meticulous record keeping by the British colonial administration. What we do know is that sadly not all of those records have survived, and that is part of the challenge then to work out exactly what has happened. We talked about gender, and I mean, the media, like many fields, is still quite male dominated. I'm delighted to see a growth in the number of women and other groups in the whole of the media sphere. We're still got a long way to go across the globe, not just in Kenya, not just in the UK, but across the globe in gender representation. And increasingly, it is about mainstreaming these issues. Sexual violence against women is not an issue about women. Actually, women are fairly peripheral. This is a power play by that very small minority of usually men who have perpetuated that violence. And therefore it's incumbent upon the vast majority overwhelming majority of the men and women to work together on this issue. It's not a women's issue. And I think the more that actually we see male commentators addressing some of this as well, and not just leaving it on women to take forward, then the stronger we will be as societies. You mentioned some of the programs that we're spending here. I'm delighted to say that the Prevent program I mentioned will be going ahead, and we will be continuing to support media freedom work here in Kenya and in the region. Why Kisumu, Mombasa and Nairobi? Well, we'd like to do this globally. I would love to do this across the whole of Kenya, but you've got to start somewhere, and those are areas that were identified to us in conversation with civil society and with journalist groups as a good starting point. I agree, at some point it would be great to have this across Kenya, but let's start here, prove the concept, prove how we can work together first. And in terms of mentorship and support to academia, I agree, developing the next generation of journalists is vitally important. And actually this begins at school, not just in academic institutions at the university level, and it's all about critical thinking. And this is one of the challenges that I think we see today, where people are just taking what they see in a tweet as fact, something on social media as fact. Now, as good journalists, you will know that you don't publish something unless you've got at least one corroborating source, because if not, it's just a rumor. But we're run by a world now in which rumor and conjecture is seen as fact, and it's not. And that's why the importance of good journalism, but also helping educate all of our peoples about what understanding, interrogating information, not just data, but information. What is the source? Where has it come from? Who placed it there? What's the interest of that person in asking the question or in putting something out? Is someone paying them to do it? And then holding, as I say, those high standards of having at least two sources, at least one corroborating source for any information, and getting that educated through the system is vital. So would love to hear more about your proposal, George, and different possible ways that we might be able to support. So please be in touch with Dan and the team. Thank you.
Great. I think if you could just hold for a moment. Yeah. Suggesting that just stay there. There's one more question online. I think this is from Odhiambo Lale, who says, former British PM Theresa May once said, as a leader, one must make a decision no matter what. What's the biggest challenge you have faced as a diplomat in Kenya in the past 2 years? Interesting. Any other question from the floor? Okay, let's, Eric, then we have.
Thank you so much, Madam Ambassador. First of all, I must confirm that during the Global Media Conference in the UK, which I happen to have attended together with Churchill here, the UK government and the Canadian government actually did pledge that you are going to scale up the support to media freedom across the world. And just before Kenya was to benefit from one of the programs that was supposed to take place in terms of advancing the ideas and discussing ideas that were discussed in London. Actually, that is when Corona actually struck. I believe that we can still retrace that and ensure that we are able to continue the conversations that we started in London. Having said that, at that particular time, the media space in Kenya actually had different challenges. And over the past 4 months, we've seen actually the space, the media industry changing here in Kenya. And two critical issues have actually taken place. One, we've seen the Kenyan government actually coming out very strongly to claim the media regulation in Kenya so that we can move away from the core regulation regime to a pure state regulation. I would wish to find out from you what your take on that. Then two, after that attempt actually flopped, we've seen the Communication Authority, which is a state agency, coming up with very heavy penalties on different media houses that have been accused of violating some of the laws and the programming code. Then last, I want to also confirm that Protect project is a very important project. I know we've partners as the Union of Journalists, we partnered with Internews so that they can support the legal aid and so that we're able to support many journalists who sometimes face these challenges and they may need to get some legal representation and also just training and getting to get a feel of what they are required to do, because some of these journalists actually are just joining the industry. And lastly, I will also request if the UK government will be willing to support some of the media programs that we have that actually respond to the challenges that we have. Martin did mention that in Kenya, we've got Kenya Media Sector Working Group that actually we've identified 4 pillars that we believe if they are supported, we will be able to address some of the challenges. So pillar number 1 is addressing the issue of media sustainability. Pillar number 2 is what was mentioned by Martin and also Zebeda here, the issue of the laws that actually contradict our constitution, and that is legal reform and legislative reform, so that we're able to get a legal framework that is able to help us. Then the third one is the media support. What kind of the support do we need from international partners and even from the government, so they're able to address all the challenges? Then the last one, and which is the most important one, we have men and women who work in the media industry, and more often than not, they are either being harassed, intimidated, or pursued by the people who believe that the stories that they are carrying actually are affecting them. So we would wish to see if the UK government can actually help us support the 4 pillars that we've identified as the media stakeholders to help us address the challenges. Thank you. Oh, my name is Eric Odwer. I'm the Secretary General of the Kenyan Union of Journalists.
Good afternoon, Madam High Commissioner. My name is Pamela Sitoni. I am a trustee of the Kenya Editors Guild, and I also work at Nation Media Group as editor of the Daily Nation. I have 2 questions. First, a comment and then 2 questions. The comment is that your Protect Fund really is like music to my ears, because you have touched on all the pain points for us. And then my question is, I'm particularly interested in the aspect of supporting media houses to come up with alternative business models. And on this one, I'd like to know whether you have looked at the supporting mainly the community media stations, because what you call the legacy media houses seem to have a plan. They also require some support, but they seem to have a plan and they're already working on their plan. But I worry that if we do not support the struggling community media houses, we might see many of them closing shop, and yet they're really, really important to this country's development, and also just very important to access of information at all levels in the country. And then my second question, Madam High Commissioner, is that your predecessors have had very interesting relations with our governments. So from one who made people very unhappy because he accused them of vomiting on people's shoes, to one who talked about choices having consequences. And we are in that space where we feel like the international community, the diplomatic community has kind of been whipped into line. And we're just wondering whether, as we go into this very heightened political situation, can you give us your commitment that you will be on our side as media? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to start with the last one first. Am I going to be making any controversial statements in the near future that will be great for your newspaper sales, Pamela? No, I'm not. Sorry. But as I touched on in my speech, I think there are times when you need to say things in public, and there are times when it's more effective to say things in private. And I and the other sort of key members of the diplomatic community who are supporters of media freedom and democracy and fair and open societies will be constantly making that calculation. At what point should we say something in private, which will be our default preference, because frankly, I think you get more done that way. And then what are those circumstances where you do have to say something in public? So I'm not going to guarantee controversial press, but I can guarantee that we will be supporting media freedom, democracy and open society in all its ways, including on our messaging. In terms of business models and community stations, agree these are incredibly important. Some of that is worked into our Protect programme and will be as it develops. And Nikolai and yourself might want to discuss that over lunch after this. In terms of Eric supporting the pillars, the 4 pillars that media stakeholders have identified, they actually largely match to the pillars of the Protect programme. So I'm hopeful that we will have mutual interest in working together there and supporting you. And that's again where I think that conversation will be very useful. And you and Nikolai as well, I think we'll want to discuss that further in the margins after this. In terms of overall the UK's monitoring closely some of the attempts to perhaps constrain a little bit the operating space. And one key message that I've heard from pretty much all Kenyans I've spoken to is the importance and centrality of the 2010 Constitution and respecting that Constitution. And that's very much in our mind as we observe what is happening and have private meetings with some of the decision makers. Last but not least, the question on the chat around my biggest sort of challenge or decision as High Commissioner. And I'm torn between thinking I don't have one versus it feels like that every single day. But I think probably the biggest ones are actually not that unusual. It's ones that impacted all of us, which is COVID. And in our particular case, how did we change our operating model as a High Commissioner? I mean, diplomacy, right, is all about people. It's all about meeting people. It's about having those side conversations. It's about having meetings. And what COVID did to us, like to all of you, is say that model is no longer possible. I had a meeting earlier today with the chair of the National Assembly's Foreign and Defence Committee, and we commented that if this was pre-COVID, we would have met 10 times already at some sort of diplomatic function, which isn't just about cocktails and canapes. It's actually about getting an awful lot of that. There's a bit of that as well. But it is also about getting a lot of work done in the margins. So, at an average national day that an embassy hosts, for example, you can have 10 5-minute meetings and get through an awful lot of business and see an awful lot of people. And now with COVID, you can't do that. So you have to formally book in an hour slot in somebody's diary. You then sit at opposite sides of the room. You've got your mask on. So you probably don't recognize them if you run into them in the street or the supermarket 2 days later, and they don't recognize you. So I think the biggest challenges have been around that. How do we do business? How do we re-gear our business model, our operating model? But I know that's not just unique to our High Commission, that's much broader, including in the media sector, because after all, you're relying on going out on the ground and interviewing people and getting information. And a lot of that you can only do when it's face to face. So COVID is going to be with us for some time to come. And so finding these new ways of working is great. But I really hope that if I do come back to be with you again, I really hope we're able to do that fully in person and not to 100 of you down the line on a virtual call. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam High Commissioner. I think we take the last round of questions and probably go the what's on the chat first. Mashara Gaitho again, in a nutshell, asking what particular circumstances or data informed the imposition of the restrictions, I think in relation to the travel restrictions that were instituted about a month ago, and probably an update on that. And two, from myself on the grants, I work on the business desk, and the numbers are exciting for us. So in terms of absolute numbers, how much these grants are, or probably the entire Protect program, how much is the UK government committing for Kenyan purpose? I think that will be, anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, the only two questions, then take it back to Zubeida to close it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So on the last one, we're still working through the specific finances. So we've already done the thing that you're not supposed to do, which is we've started spending money before we've pinned down exactly what we've got, because frankly, this is too important to wait until we've got all the figures through. But we hope to have those within the next few days. But in the meantime, we're still driving ahead with these programs. I would have been disappointed if someone hadn't asked me about the travel restrictions between our countries. You know, look, we're in a global pandemic, and this is not going away anytime soon. You know, vaccines will get us to a certain point, but we also don't know how effective some of these vaccines are yet against some of the new variants of concern that we are seeing. And one of the UK sort of model, as it were, is, you know, we invested early on vaccines for everybody. The UK is the biggest contributor towards COVAX, which has already delivered the first 1 million vaccines to Kenya. And our model essentially, as we go through our worst recession in 300 years back in the UK, where lockdown doesn't mean what lockdown has meant in Kenya. Lockdown is you can't see other people. My poor 80-year-old parents have not seen other human beings for the best part of a year. They get to go to the supermarket once a week, and frankly, they look like they're out of some sort of horror movie. Well, actually, my mum's a bit more reckless. It looks sort of some sort of horror movie in terms of dressing up and, you know, protecting themselves as they go to the supermarket. So lockdown in the UK is much, much more severe than lockdown has been in Kenya. And after nearly a year, the UK is coming out of this lockdown. People are able to go and have a drink with friends for the first time. In a few weeks' time, they might be able to meet their friends indoors. You can't do this in the UK, though. You can't have a meeting like this in the UK yet. So our business model, essentially, to get back to normal, is vaccinating people. And of course, in the UK, we have over 3 million people who are over 80. And we know that COVID so far has really impacted on older people. So Kenya benefits from being a younger country. The UK is a demographically older country, which makes it more vulnerable. So in terms of the data that went into the recent listing, it was essentially this, which is that, you know, UK vaccine numbers are going up. We are starting to open our economy, but we don't know the impact of these new variants against vis-a-vis the vaccines. And our real worry is that a new variant gets into our country that essentially means you have to start the whole thing all over again, and we have to shut down again. So while all of that research is being worked through, we are being super cautious about what potential variants can get into the UK. Now, coming from Kenya, we've known for a while now that the B1351, unfairly in shorthand called the South Africa vaccine, but actually it's merely that the South Africans were smart enough to do the work to see it and to see that this new variant had emerged. We are worried about that variant and other variants getting into the UK population, meaning that we have to lock down again. So to give you an example, one case of the South African variant was found in South London a couple of weeks ago. Within 2 days, we'd done 500,000 PCR tests on people in that neighbourhood to try and track and to minimise the infection that this one person could have spread. And what we've seen from Kenya is that, flights have still been going less frequently over the last few months, but about 550 people have been going from Kenya to the UK. And in the UK, you have to do a PCR test on day 2 and day 8. And on the day 2 tests, a significant number of people coming from Kenya, I stress people coming from Kenya, not Kenyans, people coming from Kenya were testing positive, and nearly a third of those were testing positive for this B1351 variant. So that essentially is behind why the UK put those travel restrictions in place. It was not personal, but it is about protecting the UK and stopping that variant getting in. What will change it and make it go back is more genomic sequencing. So Kenya can see where it's got variants of concerns coming in. And we saw the reports last week in the media of the variant 617 coming in, 5 cases of that along the coast, and vaccinations. And the UK continues to work hard with Kenya, with COVAX, to try and get more people vaccinated, because we know it's a cliche, but it's true. None of us are safe until we're all safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Asante sana. I believe each one of us has a lot to take home from the session that we've had today. A few months ago, I was watching an interview where you were sharing your story on sexual harassment, and it left me emotional because most of us are affected, but we choose to suffer in silence. So I look forward to more interactions with you, because I believe we have a lot to learn from you as journalists in Kenya, as we head to the elections next year, as an expert in issues to do with security and what else? Security, terrorism, and all that. I believe we have a lot to learn from you as we look forward to bringing a story or covering the story safely as journalists. So thank you so much for making time for us. Someone tells me, a bird has whispered to me that lunch is ready. There's soup, there's salad. Are you ready? Is your tummy ready? Thank you so much to you all. I now call, I would like to invite Linda Batch, the Chair of Programs Committee, to give a vote of thanks before we close this session. Linda?
So good afternoon once again. Sorry.
Good afternoon.
You can't hear? Can you hear me? I'm gonna maybe I remove the mask. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, in the morning, I think I was so early. So I was still thinking about morning. So I asked good morning, and it was already midday. My apologies. So I believe we've had a great afternoon. And first I want to thank our guests, starting with Madam High Commissioner Jane Marriott, and the guests who accompanied you, Nikolai. It was nice hosting you. And Daniel, yeah, it was a pleasure hosting you today. And the conversations we've had, they're great. Like the Protect program. It's something that really sounds exciting. And us as the Editors Guild, we'd like to work with you more on this. And also having you as a woman holding this great position, it's just exciting. I think even the other day, Kenyans were all excited about getting Martha Koome as our future CJ. Yeah. So when we have a woman holding this great position, it feels nice. I don't know about the rest, but for me, it feels nice. Yeah. Also want to thank KEG, starting with our president, Churchill Otieno, and the council, the EC members who are in today. I think we put in some work. The planning started quite early, and today it's come to fruition, and I just want to thank everyone. So thank you very much. Our keynote speaker, Martin Maasai, thank you for the points you raised. Asante sana. The Secretariat, it's not easy hosting an event given the COVID times, but I believe you've done a great job, so thank you. Annie, Raylene, Jeru, and the team that is broadcasting everything online. We thank you so much. I also thank the hotel, Stanley, and the media. I think we have KTN, Citizen. In case I forget to mention you, but I believe, yeah, we got some coverage from our media partners and we're grateful for it. In case I forgot to mention you, thank you very much for being part of this, our MC of the day. Thank you so much. Even as now we plan to have our lunch, let's keep the conversation going. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much, Linda. Just to mention, my buddy is back with more information. She tells me that you'll be served while you're seated here. So you don't need to move. The waiters and waitresses will serve you lunch while you're seated here, soup and salad to begin with. But let's keep the conversation going. Let's interact. Let's get to know each other more, all right, over lunch. But let's remember, COVID is here. COVID is real. So let's keep the social distance, please, all right? So who will pray for lunch? Is it still Martin or is it you, Dan? Martin, please.
Let's say thanks. Oh Lord, we come to you in thanksgiving. We've come to the end of today's conversations. And now there is food for us. We pray that you bless it and you take it. In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen. Thank you very much to all of you and those of us who joined virtually. Asanteni sana, sana, sana. Thank you very much. Enjoy your afternoon. Bon appetit.